Hello, everyone, and welcome to the pWo cast. Today's episode, we are dedicating to the life and accomplishments of Jon Huber, who professional wrestling fans may know better as Brodie Lee or Luke Harper. Huber unfortunately passed away this past week of a non-COVID lung issue at 41 years of age. So we are taking this episode to celebrate his life and his accomplishments in the wrestling world. If you'd like to help out his family financially in any way, there are several ways you could do that. A donation to the American Lung Association is a big step into helping, with these lung issues that pop up and helping with the cure of them. You can also, if you go to prowrestlingtees.com, any merch of his that was on there will be going to the family. Any proceeds from merch from different wrestlers, CM Punk, Mick Foley are two big ones. Their merch proceeds for the month of January will also be going to the Huber family. So if you wanted to help out financially in any way, those would be the best ways to do so. Well, that being said, let's go on to the episode and talking about this wonderful professional wrestler.
Yeah, so Jon Huber, in my mind, was always one of the most underrated guys anywhere he worked. I don't think he ever got as big of a shot as he should have. I think had he not passed away this soon, I think AEW was planning on giving him a shot at some point. But Jon Huber really showed that you can still be a wrestler and have your career be a really big part of your life, but you can still be a family first guy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, he was one of the I don't want to say few professional wrestlers, but there aren't many wrestlers that balanced, the family life and the road life the way he did. Because I'm more of a '90s wrestling fan. You see it all the time back in the era I look at. Guys' families just completely fall apart because of how much they want to push to be the best. And Jon Huber's like, yeah, I like wrestling. I'm all about it, but I still have a family. I need to be there for them. And there's just so many clips of him, really having fun with his children, like on the road. Like the one that's circulating now is him like putting his kid Brodie on his shoulders and getting the crowd to chant Brodie. He always incorporated his kids outside of the ring into some in the ring stuff. So just an all around great guy.
Yeah, he had such a love for his family and kids, and it was so apparent, You could, like you said earlier, you could almost tell with older with like 90s professional wrestlers type people that those people could really give two shits about their family, but for Brodie, family was first, His kid Brodie is named Brodie Jr., not because his real name is Brodie, but because his father's ring name is Brodie, and they wanted him to be Brodie, like named after Brodie Lee, not just named after Jon Huber, which
That's
I always
awesome.
thought was really awesome. Yeah, he the most recent taping for AEW, not for today's episode, but for like a couple weeks ago, they did a segment after all of the matches were over where Brodie Jr. pinned Kenny Omega and won the AEW World Championship. They did a whole thing about it. It's you can tell with the statements that people put out too, just how great of a person he seemed to be.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me was I heard about it right when it happened because I was just scrolling through Twitter because I had nothing better to do on whatever night it was, and one of the top things I saw was AEW, the verified Twitter account, released that statement, and I was like, hold up, I didn't even know about this. This can't be real. And everyone on Twitter is like, guys, we don't know what's going on. This just came out, and then everyone was tweeting about his wife's Instagram post, and I looked, and his wife posted something on Instagram. At that point, it had only been up for 10 minutes. And the thing that stood out to me was his wife only had like 1,500 followers, was very personal account.
Mm-hmm.
There were like 50 comments at that point, but almost all of them were people in the industry. All of them had check marks. All of them were at least, WWE, AEW. They were all wrestlers. And they immediately, they were just like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Because it's one of their own, and
Absolutely.
it stood to show he was one of the like good guys, because if you have that many people that respect you and like you, you're gonna be missed.
Absolutely. There's so many, and one of the things too that I noticed was that so many of the things that were the statements that were put out by other wrestlers, so many of them were talking first and foremost about how great of a person he was before how great of a wrestler he was. Because he was a great wrestler, no doubt about it, but he also seems like one of the nicest, most down to earth, fun people to hang around with. I wanted to talk a little bit about John Silver, who's, if people don't know, John Silver is a member of the Dark Order, which is the stable that Brodie was the leader of before he passed. And there was a text. It was a text from Tony Khan to Brodie, where Tony was saying, "Hey, we should keep going further with Silver. He reminds me of the Stevie Richards to your Raven." And Brodie was like, I absolutely love it. Brodie purchased new like gear for Silver that Silver was gonna wear. And
Wow.
you'll likely see it on tonight's AEW Dynamite, which is a tribute show to Brodie Lee. But it was basically matching gear to what Brodie wore to the ring, which is very much a big guy type of outfit to wear. But John Silver is like what 5'5", 5'6".
That's funny to me. You get a guy like Jamie Noble in something that Braun Strowman would wear. Like,
there's a really funny picture that it made me laugh. It was a picture of Brodie and Marco Stunt, and Marco was wearing like the shirt and tie from Brodie's suit, and Brodie was like holding him by the ears.
there was a really good Brodie photo I saw. It was Matt Hardy posted on Twitter at one point. I think at some match he got busted open, and I don't know if he bladed himself or if he got busted open, but obviously he was bleeding to the point where the medics wanted to attend to him when he got in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's in the back, and one of the first guys that comes up to him is Brodie Lee. And he's just like, man, are you all right? Like, you all right out there? What happened? And Matt Hardy just looks at him, and he's like, he said something along the lines of, I'm too beat up and old to be beat up and old. So,
that's good.
And there's a photo of Matt getting stitched up and Brodie Lee just like smiling at the camera with a thumbs
up. One of my favorite recent things that Brodie has done was his appearances on Being the Elite too.
Yes,
I don't know if you've watched Being the Elite or not, but the Dark Order together was on Being the Elite, and Brodie was very much the angry leader. He always hit someone in the head with papers. He always yelled at people, and he'd always say to Alex Reynolds, who was John Silver's tag team partner, he'd always say, why the fuck is it always something with Silver? One of my favorite Being the Elite moments was after they did the whole angle on AEW with the best friends and Sue's minivan, Sue being Trent's mother, and they did a whole segment of Sue like joining the Dark Order on Being the Elite, and Brodie Lee gave Sue like the stack of papers he would normally hit everyone with, and he said this over, "You better fucking sell for Sue."
That's great. I never heard that. It's fantastic.
Absolutely fantastic. If you get a chance, the most recent episode of Being the Elite is a tribute episode to Brodie as well, and that goes through all of his like Being the Elite moments. and it shows like outtakes and people's favorite moments of working on being the elite with him.
Yeah,
John,
are there like little moments where he like breaks character a bit because it's like cut?
there's and in the outtakes there are, but he
Yeah.
really tried not to. But they and one of the moments they say when he wasn't on screen, he was always the first person to laugh and mess everything up.
That's I could totally see Brodie like watching other people doing a promo and then laughing off camera and them having to be like, "All right, cut. We need to do that. We can't edit out the laughing."
Yeah, there was a thing that a sort of a code they had on camera, mostly for John Silver. When someone would start, breaking in the middle of the scene, they'd like turn their head and start laughing, and Brodie would look at them and slap them in the face and go, "Are you fucking crying? Are you fucking crying?"
It's funny because if you go into it knowing that, you'll know every time you see it that that's
right.
happening.
It's just, and as a wrestler, I think he's one of the best big men around today. I think in today's wrestling climate, big men don't get nearly as much attention as they should. And even if they do, they're like not as like actually big men, but they're like sort of shorter, really muscly people like Brian Cage,
Yeah.
But Brodie was one of the best just big guys. Like you look at Brodie Lee and without knowing the person and you're a little scared,
Yeah. Well, the thing that always intimidates you about Brodie Lee is he just looks like unhinged is the word I'll use.
Mm-hmm.
Like you look at him staring at you, with the, I guess the really scraggly beard and the hair that might not have been washed for the past month, and he's just staring you down with that glare. You're like, this guy's got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Like,
especially in his WWE run as Luke Harper, where he was almost always in jeans and a dirty white tank top.
exactly. That's what I know him from, I didn't get to see the character Brodie Lee much, so I don't necessarily know how it's different than Luke Harper, so I'll be speaking more upon the Luke Harper character, but his ring ability stayed the same.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I can speak to more, because Brodie, or John in this case, he always struck me as someone that was a lot more nimble than someone his size you would think would be. He was always he was never afraid to really go to the top rope. It wasn't every match, but there would be a couple times where he'd go to the top rope and he'd hit a move, and you'd be like, "Wow, that dude's like over 6'6". How's he doing that?"
Right? Yeah. I remember one of my favorite matches of his, and it was one of the matches I sent you to watch, was his ladder match with Dolph Ziggler at TLC 2014.
Yes.
I remember it was also one of the most disappointing endings to a match I think I've ever watched, because I remember he won the title on Raw and I got really excited because I was like, this is it. They're going to let him do his own thing. He was part of the Survivor Series match with the Authority. He was like, I'll be a team player. And he did the whole Authority Survivor Series match, and then he beat Dolph Ziggler for the Intercontinental title on Raw. And then 3 weeks later, they took the title off of him at TLC.
Wow.
But it's one of my favorite ladder matches of all time. Because with the thing with ladder matches is that most people equate ladder matches with more like, high flying stuff, jumping off of ladders and doing all sorts. But I love how intense the ladder can be as a weapon, throwing a ladder at someone, hitting someone with a ladder, like setting the ladder up on its side and then slamming someone's back into the side. Like, and that the ladder match stipulation sort of fits Brodie perfectly,
Yeah, agreed. And Brodie Lee versus Dolph Ziggler has to be one of the top just matchups I've heard, strictly like technical wrestlers. Like I think Dolph Ziggler's another one of those guys. That's pretty underrated in terms of that he was one of the greatest sellers of all time, in my opinion. He's up there with Sean. Just the way those guys can sell moves. So when you have a guy like Jon Huber in the other corner, it's going to be pretty cool to see how some of those strikes are sold by Dolph.
Mm-hmm.
But then in turn, it can also be cool to see the little guy sort of come back and like sort of David versus Goliath,
Right. I've never been a big fan of Cody, but one thing I can always respect is Cody's ability to sell. And in the match where Brodie Lee won the AEW TNT Championship, Cody sold his ass off. Like Brodie, he like brutalized Cody so hard that Cody's hair was different when he returned like a month later. Like
Wow.
Cody brought back he brought like dark, like black hair. Cody's natural hair color is brown, so you'd think Cody going to darker hair would be brown, but he had like black hair, and it was almost like this is dark, vengeful Cody. And it was such a great little bit of storytelling that like it was always nice to see Brodie on the like winning side of a storyline after all of the years of him not being on the winning side of a storyline in WWE, except when he was in a tag team with Rowan.
Yeah, the thing that always hurt me about Brodie is that he was never utilized the way he should have been in WWE. No. They stuck him with Bray Wyatt, which was a great intro. It was a great start. The Wyatt family is definitely one of the, I would argue, top 5 tag teams of this past decade. They were very influential. And so to be in a staple with that kind of, I guess, wielding power is a great intro. But WWE just didn't really allow him to expand his character from that to become more than that. And they did that with guys like Braun Strowman.
Right.
You had Strowman come in with Wyatt and then sort of become his own thing. I wish they'd done that with, at that point, Luke Harper. I wish they'd done that with him.
I remember it was the lead up to WrestleMania 33 in 2017. But in the lead up, they had, Randy Orton won the Royal Rumble, but Randy Orton went because Randy Orton was a part of the Wyatt family at this time with Wyatt and Harper. Randy Orton was like, I'm not going to use my title match because Bray Wyatt's my friend. And so they did like a whole battle royal on SmackDown. And the final 2 people were Harper and Styles. And they eliminated each other at the same time. AJ's feet hit the first. Harper clearly won that match. But I remember that whole storyline. I remember being so excited because it meant that I was so excited because I thought it were going to be a triple threat match at Mania. And I thought Harper was going to get a WWE title match at WrestleMania. And I was like, they're finally doing it. They're finally pushing him, And then they didn't push him because that's how WWE works, I guess. But I remember also in that lead up to that WrestleMania, my brother and I went to a house show in, I think it was Amherst, Mass. And the WWE title match at that house show was Bray Wyatt and Luke Harper. And in that match, at some point, Harper or Wyatt, Harper took the ring steps and like placed them on the ramp to throw Bray Wyatt into. And those ring steps just like stood there for the rest of the match. Wyatt eventually won. He left. Harper, when he won, he got up, he grabbed the ring steps, and he put them back where they were supposed to be to, I kid you not, I think the loudest pop of the night. Because it was such a great little moment where he's like, okay, I'm going to be respectful now and put this back.
It's like, reminds me of, there's a SpongeBob episode, right? Where he's like mopping up the floor, and him mopping up the floor gets the most applause, like, of the whole night. It's just that's what makes a live show a live show.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the people that go to the live shows aren't your casual fans. They're not, to an extent, there's some families, but it's mainly, people that are really into wrestling.
It's a lot of people who are really into wrestling and a lot of people that go, oh, WWE's in the area. Why don't I go give them a watch?
Yeah, exactly. I think house shows are more prone to proper reactions, though, because there's definitely times that you see crowds that just aren't into it at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of where those places are, because there's always certain areas.
Corpus Christi, Texas. Worst crowd I've ever seen. Absolutely terrible. They don't react to anything. They react to nothing.
I just remember, I think it was the Raw after Mania one year, but Evolution returned in like 2014 and they got no pop whatsoever. It was hysterical. All these little kids are sitting there like, who's Evolution? they weren't even old enough to remember Batista quitting. Like,
well, it's because they wanted to make Evolution like returning a big deal, but Daniel Bryan just won the WWE title a night ago.
That's right.
It was in New Orleans, Nolans. No, that's where WrestleMania 30 was.
That's what opened the door for Randy to go to Evolution, because I think he made Randy tap out that night, right? Daniel Bryan.
I think he either made Randy tap or Batista tap.
That's right.
I remember that whole situation was iconic because absolutely nobody wanted Batista versus Randy Orton in the main event of WrestleMania in 2014.
Yeah, with one of them being a face.
Right. With one of them being the face and one of them being a part-timer who literally returned 2 months ago and left the month after.
It was just really funny how they wanted Batista to be a face when he came in. And then it took them like 2 months to realize, oh, this is horrible. This is never going to work.
He had a small feud with Alberto Del Rio that nobody remembers except for me.
I didn't even remember that.
I remember that be like, why? Why are they doing this? They had a match at Elimination Chamber.
I forgot Alberto Del Rio was even a thing. Like,
and it should stay that way. Because he's like genuinely a terrible person. So it should stay that way. Oh,
he's horrible. I do not like him
horrible. He can stay away from my wrestling forever. He's not interesting enough to warrant getting signed to anywhere.
He is the opposite of Jon Huber.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Gosh, yeah. And like we haven't even talked about him as a tag team wrestler with Rowan.
You're right, because Harper and Rowan did split up once Wyatt kind of went solo again.
Right. But the thing is with the tag team is that despite the fact that WWE kept sort of like when they're like, okay, we don't know what to do now, let's put him back with Rowan and see what happens. Him and Rowan were always a great tag team. They always had such a presence to them, you know? They had their feud with I think it was the Usos in 2014 over the tag titles. That was just every single one of those matches was phenomenal. And I still don't know how they didn't win any of those matches. But those matches were great. Their return as the Bludgeon Brothers in 2017 was especially fun. I liked the big hammers they carried around. It was like, okay. It was cool because they genuinely had them like destroy like 3 tag teams in their return. Like they destroyed like the Usos in the New Day, which like
that's awesome.
If you need to establish a tag team, that's how you do it.
You just got to make them run through.
Yeah, it's just you don't see in general a lot of tag teams that are 2 big men. You usually get the big man and the little man. You get the Michaels and Diesel. You get right now in NXT, there's Killian Dane and Drake Maverick, where Killian Dane's like huge and Drake Maverick's like the size of a child. Like
you get Team Hell No. You get Kane and Daniel Bryan.
You get Kane and RVD. You get Kane and X-Pac.
Just put the Big Show with anyone else.
Yeah. It's just also why I liked Big Show and Kane as a tag team when they teamed up. Because a tag team, what are you gonna do? They're both huge. Like, if one of them's big and one of them's small, like, I just go after Daniel Bryan instead. It'll all be good. But they're both big and they're scary and they slapped each other before they did moves. Like,
it's especially scary when you know the person in the other corner is the mayor of a city and they have like full like legal possibilities at the helm in their grasp.
This is completely off topic, but on Survivor Series they did that like farewell to the Undertaker, and everyone came out in like normal clothes, but for whatever reason when Kane came out, he came out in full gear. And my first thought was, they're not about to do an impromptu match with fucking Kane and the Undertaker, are they? But no, he just decided to come out in full Kane gear. They wanted Kane and not Mayor Glenn Jacobs.
I mean, that's fair. Mayor Glenn Jacobs, I don't think would have served the Undertaker as well as Kane.
The difference between the two being Kane wears a mask.
and for a while, Kane didn't wear a mask.
It's true. And it was at the beginning a better part of his career and then wasn't very quickly.
Oh, anyway. I remember when he was unmasked.
It was one of the great moments of Raw, you know? That look of like the sort of charred-esque face with the very much bald hair except for like one strand in the back.
Yeah, that was a really cool look. And it brings up something for other guys that are masked, you know, because sometimes you see him and sometimes you don't, right? Like most people know what Kane looks like without a mask.
Mm-hmm.
The one I'll bring up is Rey Mysterio, because if you look, you can find him without a mask, but it's very hard. It's only been like 1 or 2 moments throughout his career.
Well, actually, for like a year or two at the end of WCW,
he
was completely unmasked because he lost the mask versus hair or whatever match. So there was
I think it was with Kevin Nash, maybe. I don't know.
Probably. Kevin Nash loves beating people he's not supposed to beat.
He hates those. What did he call them? He called them vanilla midgets.
Yes,
all the small guys.
Yeah, but I'm glad that Brodie never cut his hair because I think that would have taken away from his character.
Agreed.
Like when Braun cut his hair, I was like, oh, I don't really care anymore.
Yeah, you're just a big guy with no hair.
Yeah, now you're just a bald dude with a beard. That's like everyone in wrestling right now. You're either bald with a beard or long hair with a beard.
I was gonna say, if you're bald and you're a big guy, you should just run for mayor.
It's true.
That's what I've learned.
I think the Big Show's got a good case to become the mayor
of Kane versus the Big Show.
Do a wrestling match for mayor of Knox County, Tennessee.
Yeah. The gubernatorial election. It's like the presidency. Like we can just throw the election results out, except for a wrestling match this time.
Yes. Oh. Every election should be decided in a wrestling match.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, not directly, but Donald Trump does kind of have a victory at WrestleMania.
That's true. Donald Trump has the experience advantage.
Yeah, he was there. I mean, Bobby Lashley wrestled for him, but he was there.
I mean, he's certainly got the weight advantage.
Yes.
100%. He's a sturdy boy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone like Photoshopped Trump, where they made him have like a more traditional comb over, like someone you'd see on Fox News, one of those like older Republican guys, where it's
like Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, like Chris Wallace or some old white guy, right? Yeah. They photoshopped his hair like that. It looked awful, to tell you the truth.
I mean, his hair kind of always looks awful.
Exactly. Someone said he should do like kind of what Jesse Ventura did back when he was governor of Minnesota, just completely shave his head and grow a goatee.
Oh, yeah.
And look like badass.
It's true. And then Jesse Ventura came back to commentate for a little bit.
That's right. And then he started growing his like long blonde locks and now long white locks out, you know.
Another Brodie moment I'll always remember was when he debuted in AEW. Because the rumors had been circulating for a little bit. And it was the first show of the COVID era. It was their first show without fans, like at all.
Wow.
And they had been hinting towards who the Exalted One of the Dark Order was going to be. And just like everyone assumed it was going to be Matt Hardy. And Matt Hardy did also debut on that episode of Dynamite, just at the end, at a different part of the storyline. But they did the whole promo thing. And the way they did it, the reveal was really cool because they did like the sort of dark, distorted voice and showing pictures and clips and stuff. And then the voice got less and less distorted until it was just his voice. And it came up to a very iconic image if you've seen his solo stuff in WWE of like sort of him in a room that's kind of dark with the light bulbs hanging around him.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
And it was like, oh my God, it's Brodie Lee. And then they had to call him Mr. Brodie Lee. And his character was pretty much if Vince McMahon was a huge wrestler.
Oh, well, that brings up a point is like when you're watching that, right? Up to that point, you only know him as Luke Harper. So until they actually announce his name, you're
Right.
like, oh my God, that's
the guy. Unless you knew him from before he was in WWE.
Was that his name before?
Yeah, he was okay. Brodie Lee, and then he went to WWE, and then when he went out, he was Brodie Lee again.
Okay.
The Brodie, if it wasn't obvious by just his entire appearance being an homage to Bruiser Brody.
Yes. It was funny because I was watching the AJ Styles #1 contender match right before this, and I noticed one of the things that JBL said was that, Luke Harper always reminds me of Bruiser Brody. He made sure to bring that up. I'm like, that's interesting. Even when he was in WWE, they're still kind of pushing that comparison.
Right. Absolutely. And JBL always had those things he said about every wrestler. He always mentioned reminding Luke Harper, reminding him of Bruiser Brody. He always mentioned, if you had to build a perfect professional wrestler from the ground up, you'd get Randy Orton. And anytime anyone had won the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, it was just like Brock Lesnar.
JBL as a commentator, like, I don't know. My favorite moment was when who the heck? Oh, I'm trying to remember who they were. So it's like the Legion of Doom. They were trying to be like a new Legion of Doom, and
was it the Ascension? Connor and Victor. I love those guys.
It was the Ascension. The Ascension came out there, and they were just like going off about how they were going to be the best tag team ever. And then JBL's like, "No, wait just a minute," and he like stands up, and the crowd's like, "Yeah, oh my God, JBL!" I never thought anyone would be cheering for JBL again.
Oh God,
but
no.
He gets up and he just looks at them, and he's like, "You can paint yourself green, but it don't make you a frog any more than you calling yourselves a wrestler makes you a legend." It was so weird. And then all he had to do was just tear his button up and bring down Ron Simmons, and that was that.
JBL almost always spoke complete and utter nonsense.
I think JBL, he's one of the few guys that only speaks in alliteration. Like, I fall into that trap myself, but it seems like everything with JBL has to be like something else. Right. Like, it can't just be its own thing. It has to be like, oh, well, this is like this,
right.
With everything.
JBL, one of the funniest JBL moments wasn't even anything JBL said, but it was that ECW One Night Stand 2005. And that was the first WWE ECW sort of pay-per-view. It was sort of like a return show, tribute show to ECW before they made it a brand. And they did a show long storyline where all the WWE guys were up in the stands and getting drunk and booing and just bashing everything. And Paul Heyman grabbed the mic at one point and said, "JBL, the only reason you were WWE champion for a year was because Triple H didn't want to work Tuesdays."
I remember that. I remember that. That was so good.
And I also remember from that Paul Heyman saying, "Edge, I got 2 words for you. Matt freaking Hardy." And then all the WWE people were like, "That's 3 words." And Edge went, "That's 3 words."
Oh, but Heyman shooting is one of my favorite. Heyman in general is one of my favorites because I'm a huge Brock Lesnar mark.
Mm-hmm.
The one promo I remember about Heyman is like 2001, I think it was. Probably right before Lesnar came in. He just shot on Vince. It was pretty iconic. It was like 10 minutes long. And Vince, to his credit, just stands there and takes it. Just takes everything. I think the behind the scenes stories about that promo are funnier than the promo itself. Because Heyman's promo actually incorporates a lot of real life stuff to the point where it does kind of make you question whether it's a shoot. It's a work, but
like the CM Punk one in 2011.
Exactly like the CM Punk one. This is probably the precursor to that CM Punk one because Heyman calls out Vince on, he went back to like the 80s and he was like, "You're a really, crap human being. You ran all your father's friends out of business," like that kind of thing. He's like, "Your father would have never sold it to you if this is what it was going to turn into." It's like, he's right though. Like this is legit, and he's actually saying it on TV. Behind the scenes, what was funny was it actually came up on a flight. Like, had to have been 2 shows before that. They were flying, and it was some road agent like Michael Hayes or Pat Patterson, one of those older guys. They were just talking, and Paul Heyman was sitting there, and one of them was just like, "Oh, if you need someone to shoot on you, Vince, Paulie's the guy to do it." And Vince just like stops. He's like, "Really? You're the guy to shoot on me?" And Paul's like, "Oh, I can do it. I haven't done it in a while. I could shoot." And one of those guys was like, "Yeah," they're like, "that could really make some money." And so Vince just turns to Paul. He's like, "Well, you think you can make me money?" And Paul's like, yeah, I can do that. It's like, "All right, we're doing this next show." And they're in Gorilla. And at this point, it's been over a week, and Paul's been sort of coming up with stuff, and he's got his promo ready to go, and he has it. And he hasn't told Vince anything. Like, Vince just wants him to actually go off because he doesn't want to, red light anything.
Right.
And they're standing in Gorilla. And Paul's like, "Vince, are you sure you don't want to hear any of this? Like, there's some pretty bad stuff in here. You sure you don't want to hear anything?" And Vince just looks at him and goes, "Will it make me money?" And Paul's like, yeah, it will make you money. Vince is like, "No, I don't want to hear it. Do it." As long as it makes me money.
When was the last time you watched SmackDown, James?
Oh, good question. Well, I mean, flipping through channels, maybe I saw some of it like a month ago. The last time I actually sat down and watched like a decent amount of SmackDown, at least a year ago, if not 2.
Okay, so I want you to watch SmackDown because I don't know if you know what Paul Heyman's currently doing on SmackDown.
I do know what
he's with Roman right now, and it's fantastic.
I've heard that's pretty cool because for a while we've all been complaining that Roman can't be his own mouthpiece, and he started to kind of turn a corner. But this is a good way of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Like Paul gives him some great guidance because Roman doesn't have to do everything.
Right.
It's like in between right? Roman's in between Brock Lesnar and CM Punk with mic
Mhm.
skills.
Yeah.
Like everyone always thought, like when Paul Heyman and CM Punk linked up, everyone was like, CM Punk's the best talker on the roster. Why are we doing that? But it ended up being really cool, some of the stuff they did.
Yeah.
And so you can have a guy that's decent at talking, and Paul Heyman can
Right.
still be a mouthpiece and work with them because they can
Right.
just bounce off each other instead of, Brock having to stand there and sort of just
Yeah.
walk around and
Which is
look around a little bit.
better for Brock because his credibility almost instantly goes away the moment he opens his mouth with the microphone in front of it.
Agreed. I don't know if we've touched upon this in a podcast episode. We've definitely touched upon what I'm about to say in some of the other things we've done, but when they had John Laurinaitis try to be Brock Lesnar's mouthpiece,
Yep.
it's just I can't just well Triple H, Hunter, this is a fair contract. You just have to listen to that for like 5 minutes.
The only time Brock Lesnar has ever spoken and it was good was when it was Brock and Heyman were out in the ring for a promo. This was almost immediately after like the brand split again in 2016.
Yeah.
And Heath came out and they were still doing the story of Heath didn't get signed by either brand, so he's trying to get signed.
He's the biggest free.
And the plan for the segment was Heath was gonna go, I need to do this for my kids, and Brock was gonna be like, Heath, I get what you mean. I got kids of my own. I got a family, blah blah blah. But Brock instead, because he went, no, that's stupid. Brock went, Heath, I got you. You got kids of your own. You got a family. I got to tell you something, Heath. I don't give a shit about your kids. And he F5'd him.
Well, what was great about that was just the shift in tone, because Lesnar looks at him. He's like, you got kids, Heath? And he points at him. He's like, and then he points at himself. He's like, I got kids too. And then he sort of like looks around and looks down and gives the crowd an opportunity to be like, yeah, whoa, okay, Brock Lesnar and Heath are matching up. And then Brock immediately just walks right into his face and just goes, I don't give a shit about your kids. And the crowd's like, yeah.
I can never dismiss Brock because Brock is one of the funniest people in wrestling too.
Oh,
and just straight up physical comedy wise, he doesn't have to say anything, but when he does whatever facial expressions he does, it's hilarious. I remember when he fought the Undertaker, I think it was at SummerSlam, and the Undertaker did his setup thing, and Brock did a setup thing too. And he's like, like laughing in his face. There was when
Money in the Bank. That whole Money in the Bank was granted. Him winning Money in the Bank was painful for you. I understand, because were you at that show?
I was there. Yeah, I was there.
And that hurt because it looked like someone.
It looked like Ali was gonna win, and I was excited because I was like, they're finally gonna give Ali a shot. This is it. And then Brock Lesnar came out, and me and my brother got up and started to leave.
That's great. Lesnar came out. You're like, well, I know what's happening here. You're not earning any more of my time, Vince.
And I thought Brock Lesnar having Money in the Bank was going to be awful. But then he did the whole the boombox thing with it.
It wasn't it like Party Brock or something?
It was the I don't remember what they called it, but it was like the Beast Box. That's what it was.
Yeah, and
he came out and he held the title like this and he like danced with it, and they eventually put like a speaker set on his briefcase.
It was like a Brock party.
The Brock party.
Oh my god, dude! They had him just carry the briefcase, and then one night, out of nowhere, they had the theme song start, and then they put like a record scratch, and we're like, and then they have some like hip hop music, and Lesnar comes down with that boombox briefcase and just starts dancing around the ring. It was the funniest thing. It literally looked like someone like edited his entrance in WWE 2K with like the creative wrestler entrance.
Yeah, they like replaced it with R-Truth or whatever.
Yeah. It was very much like what they did this year at WrestleMania with John Cena, the little like NWO teaser. Like no one thought it was ever going to actually happen,
No.
but they alluded to it a little bit.
Right.
You know, like a parallel universe. It was pretty funny.
When Brock had that briefcase, there was a Raw where Paul Heyman was cutting a promo because Brock was going to cash it in at the next pay-per-view. And Paul Heyman, like, you know, was reading the contract, and Brock was like, stop. I got a year.
Yeah.
I got a year to cash this in. Oh, I'm leaving. I don't got to do this. He just
and Heyman's like, you didn't know. And it's like, you should have told me.
He's like, how am I supposed to know? I don't watch the show.
What do you mean you didn't know? Those two are great together.
Oh, absolutely. All right.
Yeah, but it's been a while since Brock's been back, right?
It has. I'm of the opinion that he's going to win the Royal Rumble this year, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's got to come back at some point. You know, we know he's still under contract, so.
I don't think he is at the moment.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's assumed he's going to come back at some point, but I don't think he's under a contract right now.
That's interesting because WWE isn't like regular sports in the sense that their contracts aren't as public knowledge, even though they're a public company now. Like they should be disclosing more of that, but you know, you have like the NFL, you know when guys' contracts are going to be up. Yeah. WWE, you just kind of go by like what Dave Meltzer tells you. You just take it, you know, at first glance.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to wrap up this episode of the podcast. Again, if you want to help in any way, I will leave links for the American Lung Association and for Pro Wrestling Tees, as well as AEW shop. Brodie Lee's merch on there will also go towards his family. All proceeds from those.
Yes, even if it's only something as small as $5, right. I'm sure, and any amount you can give to the American Lung Association or his family is really going to help them out during this time.
Absolutely, anything helps. You know, I bought a CM Punk T-shirt the other day to support it because I was going to buy one anyway. So I was like, well, it's a better time than any, you know. So awesome. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoy this episode. We talked about wrestling the entire time, which is, I feel like something we try to avoid, but it happens.
Well,
but it's important for this episode. Yes. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.